So the disco at Canterbury has generated quite a lot of public interest, partly because of the petition and the vigil, which happened, actually 2 vigils. I just thought I'd give a few thoughts about it and why it happened and what it was. So just to recap, for those people who don't know, what was it all about? The authorities, the dean at Canterbury Cathedral, decided to have a disco in Canterbury Cathedral, a silent disco, serving alcohol, and there was a light show and so on in the nave of the cathedral. There were various reasons given for this. Amongst them were social outreach, raising money. They were the 2 main ones. And the fact that this event was considered in itself to be some kind of service, like a praising of God, So I just wanted to run through what that actually entailed. So people obviously bought tickets online for this event. It was advertised, a silent disco is one where people listen to music on headphones, and they all carried these kind of luminous sticks and danced around inside the cathedral. This can be easily viewed on many videos which are available online. So many traditionalist Christians decided that this was an outrage and an abomination and decided to do something about it. Now, this has been going on in the sort of old British cathedrals for actually decades, and I wasn't really aware of it. It was only because this was in Canterbury, the mother church of the nation, that protest was galvanised, and that was really, has to be said, by traditionalist Roman Catholics. In fact, virtually all of the people protesting, Orthodox, Catholics and evangelicals, were not members of the Anglican Church. There was only really a couple of Anglicans that I noticed at the vigils. So why is this outrageous? Well, I think it really points to the fact that the whole idea of the sacred has gone, and is gradually disappearing, not only from the public sphere, but evidently from even from within nominally Christian organisations. And I'll just throw a couple of horrific, in my opinion, dichotomies this throws up. So inside this building, which has Saxon origins, and where the remains of relics of people, saints like Saint Dunstan lie, and where St Augustine came to preach 1,500 years ago for the conversion of England, and where Thomas Becket was martyred, actually very close to where the event was happening. So the place where Thomas Becket poured out his blood on the ground is an incredibly holy site for believers, mainly Roman Catholics, has to be said. But nevertheless, it's part of our national Christian heritage, where thousands of pilgrims have come over the years to pay their respects. On that very spot, just next to it, a few places next to it, was the DJs blaring out, and people were singing along to such things as "I'm so horny, 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 horny," and waving luminous sticks in the air, drinking alcohol. If you think this is appropriate, then you're listening to this, I think you live in a different universe to me. I think that's kind of what I can say about that. And so we set up and we started to pray outside, sing hymns. And what was really amazing to me was the amount of people, just ordinary people, who came up, who said, we're not believers, but we think this is horrendous. We think this is like a violation. We feel this is like a violation. And so this has been sort of proselytized by a tiny, active, ultra-liberal elite inside the Anglican Church, and it's not generally something that ordinary people want. They find it distasteful, I would say. Someone on Twitter made an interesting comment that the people going into the rave were generally older than the people praying outside. And also, I can say this because I was there, they weren't serving, the alcohol inside was expensive, it's true, in order maybe to stop people drinking too much. But obviously, if you're going to a rave, then the first thing you do is get sort of drunk before you go in. I think they called it preloading. Certainly people were obviously inebriated, and some people were on drugs. So some people who came up to me looked completely high on drugs. So they're going into a church for a party. So this obviously carried on. We continued praying outside, and we bore witness in the end to God, and they didn't allow us into the precinct to pray directly outside, so we prayed outside in the street, which wasn't a bad thing because it gave us an opportunity to bear witness for the faith, for Christ outside in the public sphere. So some people might say to me, because I am Orthodox, why am I getting involved? Why do I care really about what the Anglican Church... We all know the Anglican Church has been kind of on its last legs for years, and anyway, it was a church that was founded by a wife murderer and a kleptomaniac, who did the biggest cultural destruction in the history of this country, more than the Luftwaffe. Well, all of that's true. I agree with all of that, but nevertheless, within the Anglican Church and within many spheres, there are still good people actually for a long time, and it really reminded me of the Anglo-Catholics in the 19th century, who went into the slums of the East End and other cities in the UK, and they built beautiful churches. And because I'm researching into the bit at the moment, they had people, from these places in the slum areas, singing the Angelus and attending beautiful services, being converted by beauty, as I think Dostoevsky said. This was exactly the opposite of that. So let me come to the excuses given by these people. First, let me say that I forgot to say that for Orthodox, this is a holy place as well, because it goes back way before the split in the East and West, and it's a holy place. It's not only a holy place for Orthodox; it's a holy place and a sacred space for non-believers too. For it's part of our Christian heritage, and to treat it like this is really is trying to mock our. So much mockery has been poured out upon this country by the liberal elite, and this is just one more piece in that puzzle. So the excuses given, the first one, the one I found most offensive of all, is that this was outreach. So this is promoted by these people as because obviously service attendance is declining, and it's attempt to get people who don't come into church to come into church. So what they do is they turn the church into a nightclub to get people to come to church. This is so absolutely patronising and elitist. So what the argument is that the common people, the plebs, can only be moved by more endless hedonism, more boring pop music. They cannot be moved by high culture and high art. So they remove actually the last connection that a lot of people had to this world of transcendent beauty and high art. And they try to get them to come in with more of the same. Now, of course, it doesn't work because, if you want to go to a nightclub, you go to a nightclub. If you want to go to church, then you go to church and you seek out church. And this is why traditionalist denominations are holding on to their members and even growing their members in a far greater way than these Anglican secularists, really. So the other argument is money. This is offensive too. It's not, for me, it's not an argument about balancing the books, but it's a theological argument. For a start, these cathedrals are now run like businesses, like everything else in this country, in the West certainly. They have huge gift shops selling overpriced tat, and they're run really as businesses, often to pay the wages of the people inside them, not to so much to keep up the building. This is a kind of byproduct of that. I think this event, by my calculations, raised enough to just about cover one day or a day and a half at the most of the cathedral's running. The £30,000 it needs to keep running every day. How much of that is wages? We don't know. I don't know. How much of the 11 billion investment fund of the Anglican Church is spent on the upkeep of its buildings? As far as I understand it, the clergy of the Anglican Church get stipends, which means that they get just paid. That's not for their. It's not like a wage, because actually their accommodation is often free, which is the biggest outlay for most people. So accommodation, bills, council tax will get free, and they get a stipend on top of that. And then on top of that, I think they charge for services. So my heart actually bleeds for them. So I think on top of that, we can add that churches are not museums. Treat them like museums with huge entrance fees. I think the entrance fee at Canterbury is £17 or more. Then people would treat them like museums. For all the vitriol which is poured out onto the Russian church by our Western media, I have never been asked to pay to go into a Russian church in Russia or in the diaspora. Even the most beautifully restored churches in Russia are free, and no one asks you to pay to go in. When the Moscow Patriarchate took over the church in Nice, where there was an entrance fee, the first thing they did was to get rid of the entrance fee, because no one should have to pay to go into church or be asked to pay. I think that they should use the lilies of the field argument a bit more, which stop worrying so much about your wages, and if the building needs repairs, are we really saying that Canterbury Cathedral would fall into the ground if we don't have raves in it? I do not believe that for 1 minute. For one thing, the Church of England is highly connected to the Crown, which owns 30% of the land in this country. So, enough. I will get off my soapbox about money, but I do not buy it in any way, and I absolutely resent the argument that give us the money or we'll do the sacrilege. I find that to be completely offensive. They always bring out this quote from Irenaeus of Lyons, who was a 2nd and 3rd century theologian. So this argument, the glory of God is a living man. Now it's actually a slight misquote, but anyway, let's go with that, because that's what they say. So the argument is that anything we do that is alive is praising God. Well, this may be true actually, and St. Paul said, pray without ceasing is something that is said. So this is true, but there are lots of things that are done by human beings that I can think of some that are done by married couples that are not suitable for doing inside a church. The church does believe in giving glory to God and that the whole world glorifies God, and that people glorify God when they are, walking about praying and so on. But it's not the same as listening to Eminem in a holy place. There are certain things that are appropriate in certain places. So. I mean, there's more that can be said about this last argument, but it's in a way the flimsiest argument they use, which is why they don't use it so much. So that's all I have to say about it in this little short video. There are ways to get involved, because basically Canterbury is the beginning, and there is other ones planned, and if Orthodox people are interested, ones that we will be focusing on are Ely, where one of our greatest and most beloved saints set up was an abbess of the monastery there, St. Ethelfrida, and one that I find absolutely heartrending is St. Albans, because that was where our proto-martyr St. Alban spilt his blood for Christ, and bear in mind that these things are going to get worse and worse. The next thing they will do is switch off the silent things, so they will be allowed, and I guarantee that they will be tied into things like Pride Month and so on, probably in an effort to get us condemned as, bigots or something. So, yeah, it's important that we do this, I think.